My sister called me a gold digger at the Korean Mafia boss's wedding. But my counterattack started before the wedding day. The bride at the Korean Mafia boss's wedding today is my sister, not me. She is the one in the white dress. She called me a gold digger in front of 300 people. She called me desperate, jealous, a woman who could not let go. But this folder in my hand, she never knew it existed. What is inside it started moving 3 days before she walked down that aisle. I did not come here to survive today. I came here to finish what I already started. I was a black waitress in his world for 2 years. Invisible, that was the whole point. He offered me a deal, marry him for 6 months. Legal on paper only. In exchange, our family's debt would be cleared. Our home would stay safe. My sister found out, and she made sure I lost the contract. She fed his enemies lies about me, and he believed them. But while she was trying on that dress, I was finding out the truth, and I had already moved. 3 days before this wedding, I called his right hand. I gave him everything, every call, every name, every lie she told. My sister thought she was walking into a wedding. She was walking into something I had already finished. The counterattack did not start today. It started the night I found out what she really did to me. This is how a black waitress became the most important woman in the room. Step 1. The contract marriage no one was supposed to know about. Step 2. The betrayal that replaced me with my own sister. Step 3. What I found in the dark that changed everything. Step 3 is where this story turns. Because the evidence I uncovered did not just expose her, it exposed everyone. Step 4. The day she called me a gold digger at her own wedding. Step 5. The moment he reached his hand toward me and finally understood who I was. But to understand any of it, you have to go back 2 years, back to the night I was invisible. And he was the first person who noticed anyway. 2 years ago, my name was just the girl with the tray. My name is Dara. I came to Seoul from Atlanta at 23 with $200, a rolling suitcase, and a mother who made me promise to call every Sunday. I got a job waitressing at the Jade Room, a private members club inside the Oh Family's luxury hotel in the financial district. The kind of place where the most dangerous and most powerful men in the city ate 30-course dinners and made decisions that moved entire industries while servers like me refilled their water glasses and became part of the furniture. I was good at being furniture. That was not a sad thing. It was a skill I had worked for. I noticed everything. Who leaned in when which man spoke. Who checked their phones when a conversation shifted. Who tipped generously and who didn't. And what that small detail said about the kind of man they were when no one important was watching. I memorized orders, faces, voices, the particular silences that meant a deal was about to close or a threat was about to land. 2 years of it, and I had a map of that room that no one knew I was drawing. Oh Se-jin was the reason I had to be careful. He came to the Jade Room 3 nights a week without announcement, without fanfare. Always the same corner table, 1 glass of whiskey, documents arranged around him, while the rest of the room tried not to look like it was watching him. He ran the Oh Group, 4th generation of one of the oldest Korean Mafia dynasties in Seoul. Cold, precise, dangerous in the specific way that comes from never needing to be loud about it. Neck tattoos and a gold watch, and the kind of authority that made people straighten their posture from 10 feet away without knowing why. In 2 years, I had served that corner table over 100 times. He had never once spoken to me directly. That changed on a Thursday in October. I was clearing the table beside his when my cart caught the edge of a chair and a glass slipped. I caught it before it hit the floor, but just barely, and the small sound it almost made was enough. I apologized to the room in that particular way. You apologize when the person nearby is too important to address directly. He did not look up from his documents. "You have been working here for 2 years," he said. "You have never made a mistake in front of me before. I respect the record. I did not know what to say. So I said nothing and I moved on. The next morning, his assistant found me before my shift. Se-jin's office on the 32nd floor had a view of the entire city. He stood with his back to it when I walked in, which meant he was watching my face, not giving me his. Smart, deliberate. The kind of man who calculates every small advantage before you realize a calculation is happening. "Sit down," he said. I sat. "I am going to explain a situation," he said. "And then I am going to make you a proposal. You can say no, but I need you to hear it first." He told me about his grandmother, Madame O, who had built the family trust across 50 years of careful, ruthless work and had written one condition into it before she died. The heir had to be married by his 32nd birthday, or management of the foundational assets would transfer to a competing board that had been trying to take them from the O family for over a decade. He turned 32 in 7 months. His previous arranged engagement had been dissolved. Every candidate the family had presented since then had, in one way or another, a connection to someone who would benefit from access to the O Group's inner structure. Then he said the thing that surprised me. "You do not," he said. 2 years in my building, no hidden agenda, no contact with anyone who would benefit from that kind of access." He paused. "You are the only honest person in a 2-block radius of this hotel." He laid out the terms. A marriage of convenience, 6 months, legal on paper, appearances maintained at the necessary family and business events. I would be compensated fairly. My family's situation, and he knew my family's situation, which meant his people had already looked into me, would be resolved. The debt my sister Cora had run up with people who were not patient about. Repayment, the threat hanging over our mother's house in Atlanta, all of it gone within the week. I asked him one question before I answered. "Why would you trust me with all of this?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because you have been invisible in my world for 2 years, he said quietly, "and you have never once tried to use it. I thought about my mother. I thought about the house. I thought about Cora, and every bad decision she had made that I had quietly been trying to clean up from a distance for 3 years. I said yes. The first week of the contract felt like being hired for a performance. I did not know all the lines to yet. I moved into the O family's residence on the 6th floor of the hotel, a guest suite that had been quietly rearranged to look lived in without being intimate. Se-jin and I ate dinner together twice that first week at a long table designed for 12, saying careful and practical things about schedules and the appearances we needed to maintain, and which family events required both of us to be present. He was not warm. He was not meant to be. But he was precise in a way I had not expected, precise in the particular way of a man who has learned that everyone around him is always watching for weakness, and has decided that the best protection is to be as thorough about small things as he is about dangerous ones. On the second night, he noticed I had not finished the last course and, without making it obvious he was doing it for my benefit, asked his kitchen staff to adjust the following week's menu. I told him once, while we were going over a guest list for a family dinner, that one of the names on it had been at the Jade Room 6 months earlier making a deal that, based on what I had overheard, did not serve the O Group's interests. He stopped. He looked at me for a moment. "You heard that?" he said. "I hear most things," I said. He was quiet then. "You should have been at the table, not clearing it." That was the moment I understood that Oh Se-jin, underneath the cold authority and the calculated precision and the weight of an empire he had been carrying since he was 26, was a man who simply wanted to be somewhere honest. I was already giving him that without trying, and somewhere in those 11 days, the contract stopped being a transaction and started being something I could not name yet. Then Cora found out, and the small, careful thing I had started building, the thing that had nothing to do with the contract and everything to do with who he was at, midnight when the city was dark outside the window, came apart before I knew it was being taken from me. That was how long it took my sister to find out. Cora was sharp and restless, and had a talent for knowing things she was not supposed to. She was 3 years older than me, and had spent most of those years being the bright one, the bold one, the one who was going to make something of herself. Right up until she didn't. She had moved to Seoul 18 months before me and found Devin, an American expat with expensive habits and the wrong connections. He moved money and occasionally people for Chairman Do, who had spent the better part of a decade trying to dismantle everything Oh Se-jin had built. When Cora found out about the contract marriage, she did not call me. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday evening with a bottle of wine she had already opened and a smile that meant something different from what her mouth was doing. "I heard you got yourself a rich Korean husband, little sister," she said. "It is a business arrangement," I told her. She laughed. "That is what they all say." I did not like the way she said it. I should have paid more attention to the way she said it. She did not stop at one visit. 3 days later, my mother texted from Atlanta. "Dara, your sister called. She says you are marrying a man you barely know. She says it is for his money. I did not raise you to do things like this." 3 more messages followed from cousins I had not heard from in months, each one some version of the same concern. Moving through the family group chat in the particular way, news travels when someone with Cora's talent for framing makes one well-placed call. I called my mother back. I explained as clearly as I could. A business arrangement, the debt being settled, the reason I had agreed to it. There was a long pause on the line. "She says you have been trying to find a rich man since you moved to Seoul," my mother said quietly. "She says she has been watching it happen for a while now." I sat in the O family residence with my phone in my hand and heard my mother say my sister's words back to me in my mother's voice. "The house. I had done all of this for the house, for her, for all of them. And Cora had taken that and built it into the exact accusation she needed. If you have ever done something quietly, for your family, for someone you loved, something real that cost you, and had that person look at what you gave and call it selfish, drop your city in the comments right now. Because what my sister did next, I did not see coming from my own blood. 11 days after the contract was signed, Oh Se-jin's right hand, the one man in that organization who handled everything that had to be kept quiet, came to my apartment with a folder. The folder contained text messages, meeting logs, a transcript, evidence that I had been in contact with Chairman Do's people for months before the contract was offered. That I had been passing operational details about the O Group's port schedules. That the whole Waitress identity was a cover, and the contract marriage was a calculated play to gain access to the family trust structure. Every document was clean and specific and completely fabricated. But it was the kind of fabrication that looked exactly real enough for a man who had learned to trust no one to make the only decision he knew how to make. Se-jin cancelled the contract the next morning. Song came to my door with a settlement envelope and one instruction. I was to leave the Jade Room and not contact anyone connected to the O family. Again, no explanation, no confrontation, just the clean final movement of a man who handled things before they could become problems. I sat with that envelope on my kitchen table for a long time. I did not cry. What I felt was something cold and specific. The particular grief that comes when a lie is built so neatly that truth cannot get close enough to touch it. He had believed what he was shown because it was the logical thing, and I understood that. I was not angry at the logic. What kept me at that table so long was a different question entirely. What I did not know until much later, what Song told me only after everything, resolved, was that Se-jin had looked at that file 3 times the night after he dismissed me. There had been one detail that did not sit cleanly. A meeting the fabricated documents claimed I had attended was scheduled on a night when the Jade Room's own staff records showed I had worked a double shift. 2 places at once. He had noted it. Song said he had held his phone for a long time afterward. Then he had put it down, closed the file, and made a decision. A man in his position could not afford to doubt evidence over a scheduling discrepancy. The cost of being wrong in one direction was higher than the other. He made his calculation. He carried it forward. He had been wrong. He understood that almost immediately after. And for the 3 weeks that followed, he had made himself stop understanding it. That was what he could not look at himself about. Not that he had believed the lie, but that he had seen the flaw in it and chosen to look away. She was the thread he would not pull. That is what he carried into the wedding alongside everything else. My actual schedule, my actual contact history, my actual financial situation. Things that only one person in Seoul outside of the O organization knew. I put the envelope down. I started to think. I spent 3 weeks being invisible in a different way. I worked through the small network I had built without meaning to over 2 years. Kitchen staff who heard everything, the hotel concierge who saw everyone come and go, and a contact at the cellular provider's customer service desk who had never once been treated like a full person by their manager but had been consistently by me. I called in every favor and followed the thread. What it led to was this. Devin had a standing meeting 3 times a month at the same cafe with a man who worked directly for Chairman Do. The dates of those meetings matched within 48 hours. The dates when the fabricated documents about me had been submitted to Song. The second piece came a week later. Cora had an email account I recognized from college, one she believed was private, and she had left it open on a shared computer when she visited our mother's apartment in Atlanta. I had not planned to look. I looked. What I found was a draft of the fabricated file in Cora's own words, written before the real details had been added, before the names of the O Group's actual port contacts had been inserted. A first version, rough and specific and dated 3 days before Song had first shown it to Oh Se-jin. My own sister had built the lie that cost me the contract. I stayed with this knowledge for 2 days, not because I did not know what to do with it, but because I needed to understand why before I decided what to do next. And when I followed the thread far enough to see the full picture, that Cora had not just traded me for money, that she had accepted the contract marriage position herself as a direct arrangement with Do's people, that she was going to marry Oh Se-jin as a Do plant inside the O family structure, I understood what the real stakes were. This was no longer about a contract or a settlement or my own hurt. Cora was about to marry into one of the most powerful Korean Mafia dynasties in Seoul, carrying the agenda of their oldest enemy inside that wedding dress. The man who had dismissed me, the man I had spent weeks being furious at and had gradually, quietly, begun to understand, was walking directly into a trap, and I was the only person outside the trap who could see the whole shape of it. I could walk away. I had that option. I had been handed the settlement envelope. I had been told, cleanly and without cruelty, that I was no longer part of this world. I picked up my phone. Comment Counterattack below if you believe that protecting someone who let you go, not because they deserve it, not because you will get anything back, but because it is simply the right thing, is the hardest kind of strength there is. Because what she does next, she does in an empty room with nobody watching. I called Song at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. I did not ask for an appointment. I did not explain myself. I said, I have evidence of a Do connection inside the current marriage arrangement. I need 30 minutes and I need you to bring someone who can make a decision. There was a pause. Then, Jade Room back entrance. Midnight. I came with the folder. I laid everything on the table. Every phone record. Every email. The first draft of the fabricated file in Cora's handwriting matched against the polished version that had been submitted to Song 4 weeks earlier. Devin's meeting logs with Do's man. The timeline of how the fabrication was built and submitted. The arrangement between Cora and the Do organization. The specific terms I had found in a message thread she had sent Devin, which included the phrase, "Once the O contract is in my name, they get full access to the port scheduling." That was the deal. I walked Song through all of it, slowly and without emotion, because emotion would have looked like motive, and I needed this to look exactly like what it was, evidence compiled by someone who had nothing left to gain from it. Song was quiet for a long time after I finished. "You understand," he said, "that if I take this to him and he acts on it, your sister's marriage arrangement ends. Her connection to Do becomes something this family handles in ways that are not comfortable for anyone." "I understand," I said. "You had other choices," he said. "You could have let it proceed. You could have disappeared." "I know." He studied me across the table. "Why didn't you?" I had spent the better part of 3 weeks working out how to answer that. about how somewhere between the second week of the contract and the night Song handed me the settlement envelope, the man I had spent 2 years serving from a careful distance had become something more specific to me than an employer or a client or a transaction. Not because of what he had offered me, because of who he was at the corner table at midnight, reading documents alone, in a building full of people who wanted something from him, and never once letting any of them see the weight of it. Because it was right, I said, and because it would have cost me more to let it happen than to stop it. Song nodded once. He took the folder. I did not know, until Song called me 3 days before the wedding, that Oh Se-jin had decided to let the ceremony proceed. Not because he believed in it, because he and Song and the family's legal team had spent those 3 days building a complete evidentiary package to present to the family council, and they had determined that the most effective moment to present it was at the wedding itself, in front of all 12 members of the Oh family's inner circle, in a room full of witnesses, where the legal and social consequences would land simultaneously and publicly, and in a way that no one could quietly manage away. Song asked me to come to the wedding. He asked me to bring the duplicate folder he had prepared, a backup copy of the full evidence package. He told me to arrive and to wait, and that I would know the moment when it was time. I almost said no. I had done what I needed to do. I had submitted the documents. I had made the call in the dark. I did not need to be in the room when the outcome arrived. But Song said one more thing before I answered. He said, "He asked me to ask you specifically. He said to tell you that you have earned the right to be in the room." I wore black. I carried the folder. I sat near the back of the ceremony, and I watched my sister walk down the aisle in a tiara and a white dress and 300,000 won worth of alterations. And I thought about how much of a life can be spent wanting something without ever once examining the reason you want it. She found me during the cocktail hour. I was standing near the window, a glass of sparkling water in my hand that I was not drinking, when I heard that particular social brightness in her voice. The one she used when she wanted something to sound casual. She stopped 4 feet from me and looked at the black dress, at the folder under my arm, at the fact of my being there at all. "You have some nerve," she said. I said nothing. She made sure the people nearby could hear. Her voice lifted just enough to carry. "Dara came tonight, because she still cannot accept that it did not work out for her. She wanted this family's money. She always has. Our whole lives I watched her chase something she had not earned. This contract was just the most expensive attempt." She shook her head with the practiced sadness of a woman performing a wound she did not have. "A gold digger who lost. You should have stayed home, little sister." The guests nearby went still. Some of them turned. Several of the Oh family members who had drifted close looked up from their glasses. I stood there with a tear I had not asked for on my face and the folder pressed against my chest, and I did not say one word, because there was nothing left to say. The counterattack had not started tonight. It had started 3 days ago in a midnight meeting at the back entrance of the Jade Room, in a folder that was already in the hands of the family council, before Cora had finished her final dress fitting, in a decision I had made in an empty kitchen at 2 in the morning when there was no audience and nothing left to gain. She wanted a confrontation. She wanted me to argue, to plead, to make a scene that would confirm every word she had just said to the room. What she walked into was something that had already been decided. Tell me in the comments, have you ever let someone walk directly into the consequence of what they built without saying a single word? Comment "she knew" below if you believe she was always going to win from the moment she made that midnight call. Because I want to know who saw the whole shape of this from the beginning. Song stepped forward from across the room. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the particular movement of a man who has been waiting for the right moment. And this was the right moment. "Miss Dara," he said formally, in a voice that carried clean across the room. "The Oh Family Council has asked me to confirm that the documentation filed with the council registry 3 days ago has been fully verified and accepted." The room changed, not all at once. in the particular way that sophisticated rooms change. Not with a noise, but with a shift in posture, a redirected attention, the specific pause of people who are good at reading power and have just registered that it has moved. The phrase 3 days ago landed in the room the way a sealed envelope lands on a table. The content not yet open, but the weight of it already understood. Se-jin moved, not toward Cora, toward me. He crossed the room with the same controlled precision. He crossed every room, but his face had something in it I had never seen there in 2 years of watching him from a careful distance. Not the cold measurement of a man making a calculation. Something that moved underneath the control. The specific thing that moves in a person who has made a serious error and who is not afraid to stand in front of it in public. He stopped in front of me. He reached his hand out. I looked at it for a moment. "I was wrong," he said, quiet enough that only the nearest guests could hear. "You were not chasing what this family had." His eyes held mine and did not look away. "You were protecting it. 3 days ago, when you had every reason to walk away from all of this, you did not. That is not something I am going to forget." I placed my hand in his. Behind us, the family council representative had already begun speaking quietly with the Oh family's senior legal counsel. The evidence package, filed with the family trust registrar 3 days before the ceremony, had voided the succession clause's recognition of today's marriage before a single vow had been legally ratified. The ceremonial papers Cora had signed would not stand. Chairman Doe's 3-month scheme, built on a fabricated file and a jealous sister, and the assumption that a dismissed waitress would simply disappear, had already failed before the first dance was called. Cora understood it all in one moment. I watched it move across her face. The architecture of what she had built collapsing, not in a dramatic fall, but in the particular quiet way that things fall when they were never truly standing on solid ground to begin with. The tiara and the dress, and the room full of witnesses, and none of it meaning anything, and the folder in her sister's hands being the reason why. Song's people were at the door before she took a step. That night, much later, when the guests had gone, and the legal team had taken their folders, and the room had gone quiet, Se-jin found me in the corridor, outside the ballroom. He did not say anything immediately. He looked at me the way he had looked at me across the corner table for 2 years, measuring something, carefully, and then he said something that was not a calculation at all. "The original contract was for 6 months," he said. "I know. I would like to renegotiate the terms." I looked at him. "What terms?" "All of them," he said. "Starting from the beginning, not because of my grandmother's clause. Not because of the trust or the council or any deadline." He held my gaze and did not look away from it. "Because I want to, and because I owe you the chance to choose it freely. Not out of a debt, not out of a deal, just a choice." I did not say yes immediately. That was not what the moment needed. What it needed was for him to stand there and mean it with no audience left and nothing left to perform for anyone. So I stood there with him in the quiet corridor, and I let the silence do what a real beginning deserved. I said yes the second time for entirely different reasons than the first, and both times it was the right answer. Not the moment he crossed the room, not the look on her face when it all landed. The part that mattered was earlier, 3 days before, in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, holding evidence that could fix everything. The folder open on the table in front of me. My mother's phone number in my recent calls. Cora's name right above it. She was my sister. Turning that folder over meant losing her, possibly for good. Doing nothing meant watching Se-jin walk into a destruction I had the power to prevent. And the thing I kept coming back to, the thing I could not reason my way past, was this. The people who had called me a gold digger my whole life were the ones who measured every relationship, love, loyalty, family, by what it could return to them. They assumed I did the same because they could not imagine doing anything else. I chose to protect a man who had dismissed me in an empty room at midnight, with no audience and nothing to gain from it. That is not a gold digger's choice. The greatest power you will ever carry is not money or position or a name that opens doors. It is the ability to do the right thing when doing nothing would have cost you less. When the room is empty and no one is watching and the outcome is not yet written, that is when your real character shows up. She called me a gold digger because she needed me to be one. Because if I was chasing something, then what she did to me was fair competition. But I was not chasing anything. I was choosing someone. And that choice made quietly, before anyone was watching, before there was a single thing to gain. That was the beginning of everything that came after. The crown I walked out of that ballroom wearing was not a husband or a family name or a trust document with my name on it. It was the knowledge that when it cost me the most, I chose correctly. And the most powerful thing about a real counterattack is this: it does not need an audience to count. Before you leave this story, if you have ever chosen what was right over what was easy, especially when it cost you someone you loved, subscribe to Mafia Heartbeat and comment Counterattack below. Because this channel exists for every woman who made the hardest call in the dark, before anyone was watching, and then walked into the light and let it speak entirely for itself. The next story is coming, and the woman they underestimate next is holding something bigger than any folder. Stay close.